This video is going to go over extension number 1 from the airport Security.doe file. If you're not familiar, Arena has a getting started guide, which is pretty useful and very in-depth. It also does have a few example files, and this will go over the creation of one of these. I won't give you the answer initially, but what this file is answering is question 1 here, extension number 1 under the baggage check process. If you're not familiar with the baggage check process, the previous video did go over that. The next video will go over number 2, so make sure to subscribe on YouTube to see that when it comes out, or if you're watching this a few days after, it will already be up there, so check out the channel and subscribe for future videos. Now, this first process, or this first extension, is saying that once passengers complete the identification check, and if they have their ID, if it is accepted, obviously it's denied, they're not going to move through the process, and they're just going to be disposed of. And that's the disposed module, I should say. If they pass this first layer of screening, they're going to move on to the X-ray machine. This X-ray machine has a minimum 1.5 minutes for the passenger to go through it, a mean or a most likely value of 2.5 minutes, and again, this is a non-symmetrical triangular distribution is what this is telling us, a maximum of 7 minutes. And there are actually not one, but 2 different X-ray machines which we're going to use. So I'm going to walk over how you can add those to your Arena file. I'd recommend giving it a try on your own first. So you can pause this, give it a try, and then come back to this. All right, now that you've given this a try on your own, I want to go over the model that we're going to use. If you're not familiar, we had a create module creating the passengers arriving with an exponential time between arrivals. We have a checking for proper identification. This is seizing a transportation security officer resource. Then a decide module where we have a chance of passing security or not passing the identification check. People move on to the cleared one if they are successful and are denied if they are not. And these are both disposed modules. What this is asking us is to add a process module. And in fact, there are a few other ways to do this. The simplest way is actually just add one process module for the X-ray machines because there are 2 of them right here. By the way, you can drag and drop directly onto the line and that does it. You might think that maybe we need to have one process module for machine 1, one process module for machine 2. We have to put a 50-50 decide by, two-way by chance here. That's not what we need, and that's actually too complicated for this one. You could do that and could have people only join the shorter line, for instance, and have them operating at different rates. That's not what this question is asking, and it's actually pretty simple. All you need is one seize delay release process module, and if you don't remember, a seize delay release works where the passenger comes up to the machine, they seize it and occupy it for some period of time, that's the delay, and then release it, and that machine can go off to help the next person, and the passenger is free to leave. So that's what we want, and that's the most common thing that you're going to see with process modules. I'm going to go ahead and name this X-ray with a space. You can't do a dash because there are special characters that can't be used in this name. We already discovered that this is a triangular distribution with a minimum of 1.5, a most likely value of 2.5, and a max of 7. Make sure you change your time units here to minutes, which should match the base time units of the simulation, which you can change in run setup. We're going to leave this as value added, a value added process for this one, which is the same as the check for proper identification. Now that this is added, we do actually need to add a resource to this one, which we can do by typing out X-ray machine. We're going to have 1 unit seized, so every time a passenger comes up, they're going to seize a single X-ray machine, which is what we want, and that's just about done. What we have to do now is we have to add in the resources, because currently we don't have that, or at least don't have the correct value. So you can check that through your data definition panel. I actually already have that pulled up here, and you can see the default has been created for the X-ray machine. If I click on that, there's a capacity default of 1. We don't actually want this. We want a capacity of 2 because we've got 2 X-ray machines. This means you can have 2 people being serviced and then a single line going to whichever one ends up first, which is what we're asking for. I hope this matches what you got. If not, I hope you can understand why some of this is the case. What we can do to verify that everything's working correctly is run it. Ideally, we would check the model in that. And well, I guess we see another model window is currently running because I have the example file open. If I check the model, I should see no errors or so I created something, my resource exists. I can go ahead and then run this, and we should see a few different things happening. I'll go ahead and slow it down so you have a better idea. You can see that there are people showing up and they are headed toward the X-ray machine. Sometimes there's one person in the process, sometimes there's two. We can occasionally see if we do have a fast enough or something happens, we can see that there might be people waiting in a queue in front of this. If we go, it was up to 3 for just a second, which means there's one person, and we can see what happens. Sometimes it might be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. It depends really. Now we have a big queue forming, but it will eventually drop to 0 because the mean value of the X-ray machine, when you account for the fact that there's 2 of them, is less than the arrival time from the passenger arrival process, and also it doesn't really matter with this other one because the arrival process is the bottleneck in this case. So if we go ahead and batch run towards the very end of the model, we should be able to answer a few questions such as, let's go ahead and check and see what it's asking for. A few questions such as what is the utilization and what is the maximum time passenger had to wait in line for the X-ray machine. If we take a look at a report, we should be able to answer some of these values right there, which we should have to run this all the way through before we can answer that. We should be able to answer those 2 questions. What's the maximum time someone had to wait in line, and what is the utilization? The utilization should be less than 100%, and the line is likely something measured in the minutes, but less than 1 hour, being that we usually saw 0, 1, or 2 people in line, and occasionally saw 3. Like I need to go into setup and change my project parameters here to my replication parameters reports to output in notepad.exe instead of the standard report. So let's go ahead and run the simulation again so we can look at what kind of answer we're getting, and we'll batch run this all the way through. It's a little bit of an annoying bug that happens sometimes, but that's just how we can answer our 2 questions. You might use your utilization to determine if you should or shouldn't buy another machine. You could run this with 3 machines instead of 2 and see if any valuable metrics improved. Taking a look at our report, you can see that there's a few interesting things going on here. First of all, the waiting time, the average value for the waiting time queue is 3.1 minutes. That's not one of the questions that's being asked. The question is, what is the longest time being asked? So if we take a look at the maximum for this one, we can see it's 42 minutes, which is very, very long. And maybe that justifies the maximum time. Maybe the 90th percentile would be a better one to look at, is 42 minutes. If I were running this, I would try and change something about the process. Maybe it's another machine, maybe it's not. That would reduce this time a little bit further. Taking a look at a few other values, we want to look at the utilization. Utilization will be under the discrete variables, which is the X-ray utilization is 0.877, so 87%. This is half of the number busy at one time, 1.75. Number scheduled is 2 because these machines aren't scheduled to go on any breaks or anything like that. And you can see at maximum, of course, the utilization is 100%. At one time, it's using both of these. So that's how you can figure out and change this to complete the extension number 1. If you want to take a look at extension number 2, check out the next video on this channel. I hope you learned something watching All About Industrial Engineering. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll help you out any way I can if you have anything in the comments.